This video is about ESY or Extended School Year for students with disabilities. So all students with disabilities who have a current IEP must be considered for ESY services at least annually. But not all students will need ESY. Generally, it's between 5 to 15% of a district's population. Two terms that IEP members may not be familiar with is regression and recoupment. Now, regression is a decline to a lower level of functioning demonstrated by a decrease of previously learned skills that occurs as a result of an interruption in educational programming. And recoupment is the ability to recover or regain those skills at a level demonstrated prior to the interruption of educational programming. In all honesty, we all have regression and recoupment issues. But we'll be talking about what makes it significant as we go on. The primary criteria in determining a student's need for ESY services are the likelihood of significant regression of previously learned skills during a break in services and a limited or delayed recoupment of these skills after services resume. But let's be clear that this isn't the only measure. And teams will need to consider a range of factors. These other factors include the category and the severity of disability, the parent's ability to provide an educational structure at home, and the student's rate of progress. When we're talking about category of disability, we need to know that students with disabilities that require consistent and highly structured programs, they may be predisposed to regression when their services are interrupted, and that these students may also have limited recoupment capacity. When we're talking about severity of disability, although limited recoupment capacity can occur among students with moderate disabilities, and as I mentioned before, lots of people have regression without recoupment. When I come back from winter break, it generally takes me a minute or two to remember my passwords. We need to know that it's more likely to be a learning characteristic of students who have these severe disabilities. Parents' ability to provide an educational structure at home is an additional factor. So a parent or a guardian may not be able to maintain a student's level of performance during a break in programming because of the complexity of that programming, or time constraints, or a lack of expertise, or other factors. So this is a consideration, and it's relevant to whether a student can be expected to regress. Also relevant is the student's stage of mastery of crucial skills or behavioral controls at the point of the interruption in programming. We also need to consider students' rate of progress. So for example, basic self-help skills such as toileting or eating are essential for minimal independence. Stable relationships, impulse control, and appropriate peer interactions are necessary for community living. Therefore, if a student was to suffer significant regression in a skill or behavior that is particularly crucial to reaching the goal of self-sufficiency and independence from caretakers, the student requires continuous education programming in that skill or behavior area. Another relevant concern is to the extent to which the student has mastered or consolidated an important skill or behavior at the point when the program is interrupted. So since some of those behaviors or skills have not yet been generalized or mastered or consolidated, they're more easily lost, and a student is more likely to regress in that skill or that behavior area if their programming is interrupted. We should also consider the student's behavioral and physical problems, some availability of resources, the ability of the student to interact with students who do not have disabilities, the areas of curriculum that need continuous attention, and the student's vocational needs. If all of this starts to feel overwhelming, don't worry. It's actually super easy. It's based on a simple formula to determine who gets and who doesn't get ESY. Actually, I lied. That's not even close to true. It's an outright lie, really. What is true is that determination for the need of ESY cannot be based on a formula, because formulas lack the individualization needed to ensure that students with disabilities have the educational planning that they need to accommodate their unique needs. So the information that is needed by an IEP team to determine a student's need for ESY services, well, it's gathered through ongoing measurement of the student's progress towards their IEP goals. And an essential component of a student's goals is the method to measure progress. So information can be gathered through a variety of informal and formal measures, and those include things like a record of daily performance, criterion referenced and norm referenced test data, anecdotal data from information collected throughout the year, as well as behavior checklists or student work samples. Just like with all parts of the IEP process, parents must be involved in decisions regarding a student's educational progress, including progress towards goals. So parents must receive a periodic review of the student's progress towards their annual goals and to the extent of which those progress is important to the team's consideration for the need of ESY services. In addition to the valuable information already being gathered to determine progress towards annual goals, a student's IEP team should consider the following points in determining the need for ESY services. They need to consider information from a variety of sources, and the measurement should be sensitive to small changes that may occur during relatively short breaks. And the measurement information should be gathered during the student's performance after long weekends, vacations, and past summer breaks as well. And the team should consider both prior experience with regression and recruitment as predictive information. So in considering evidence of regression, your team needs to be looking at information that is both measurable, it has a baseline, has intermediate data, and ending points, establishing measurements along a predicted interval. Now, these series of measurements must include the time span, including the interruption of services. And the minimum points of measurement are generally at the end of instruction, like the end of the school year, at the beginning of the subsequent instruction, which might be the beginning of the next school year, and at the time of recruitment. So it's that difference in skill attainment that follows the interruption in those services. That is the measure of regression. So identifying how much time is required for regaining those lost skills requires several measurements to determine when recruitment actually takes place. And that might be more than just the 3 to 4 times a year that you normally do your progress monitoring that you report to parents. But it's not just your regression and your recruitment data that you need to consider. In addition, the IEP team must consider information gathered through observations and input from the family, the student, and educators. This input is critical in developing an accurate and a complete picture of the student's level of functioning, and to supply information such as their regression and recruitment history, performance in the classroom, some community-based activities, family circumstances, and recent behavioral and medical problems. So, you might be thinking that everyone regresses sometimes. So when is it significant? And the concern is that for some students with disabilities, the regression is so severe and the recruitment period is so long that without ESY services, the learning that occurred during the regular school year would be significantly jeopardized if ESY services are not provided. So let's do some fun facts of ESY. So a student cannot be required to fail or demonstrate a lack of progress for an entire year simply to prove the need for ESY services. And I bet you're probably looking to hear something like this. If no empirical data is available on regression, the need may be shown by expert opinion, parent input, or prospective criteria established by the IEP team. You want to make sure that you have all of that information in writing in your IEP. A student's involvement in ESY services 1 year does not automatically guarantee ESY services in the following years. It's an annual thing, it's decided every year. So you may be wondering, if a student doesn't make progress towards goals, does that mean they go to ESY? And the answer is nope, not necessarily. The critical question that each IEP team must ask regarding ESY services is whether that learning that has already occurred during the regular school year will be significantly jeopardized if ESY services are not provided. Do students get new goals for ESY? And the answer is no. ESY services address maintenance of previously learned skills. So what happens if the school district says yes to ESY, but the parents say, nah, we don't want to do it? Well, ESY is not compulsory, so parents do not need to send their students or their children if they don't want to. So if the family chooses to reject all ESY service options, then the team needs to document this decision. Can students use this for recovery services? And the answer is absolutely not. And we have to be very careful that we are not assigning extended school year when a student needs recovery services. They're not the same thing. So recovery services are not the same as ESY or for the loss of instruction during the year. And last but not least, do all goals have to be addressed at ESY? So if I have a student who has goals in 10 different areas, do each goal in those 10 different areas have to be looked at ESY? And the answer is no. We're only looking at those specific skills that we identify as needing to be addressed during ESY. So past and present ESY coordinators met, and we wondered what we could do to make things a little bit easier and more efficient for everyone. And so we looked to see if we could use some reports in PSSP in lieu of some of the extra documents. And we found out that yes, we can if the district uses those ESY addendums consistently across the board from all schools. So this next part of this video is to show you those parts that we're going to be pulling from this ESY addendum. So PSSP has report capabilities that we may not have had back when we had Cs. And it can allow us to do a lot of different things. And so I have built this report in PSSP, and it's based off of the ESY addendum. And it's still a work in progress. I have a few more things I need to refine and to fix up. But what I think it can do is to eliminate the quick sheets. So what you can see, I just have one test student here, but I have a student with an ID, their last name, their first name. This is the date that the ESY addendum document was finalized on, because the data will only come if the document's finalized. It tells me their grade, their school, their eligibility category, if the student requires ESY services, if they require instructional ESY services, if they require ESY services to address behavioral concerns, if they require ESY services for related services. And then not only that, I'm able to pull ESY related services in times per week, and then all services as well. We're able to pull if they have a medical diagnosis, if they have a health plan that's filled out, if they have a BIP, if they have a health plan, if they need mobility assistance, if they need special transportation, if they need a wheelchair lift, the instructional materials. Now I'm pulling that from a specific field, and I will show you all of these, and if they have an evacuation plan. And so what this should allow us to do is, if everyone fills out these forms correctly, the documents correctly, then we should be able to run this report and be able to move that a little bit closer, and we should be able to run this report and then sort and use that to help us make some decisions. So let's go back and look at this child's ESY addendum. So I popped back here, and now I'm on the first page of the ESY addendum. And you can see it has the date, it has right here where it says ESY, and then it has the area of need and the primary eligibility. And I pulled that field over into that report. So if there's something in here, it will go over into the report. Now this ESY addendum has meeting participants, and it has special factors as well. So right here where you see that it says the student requires a BIP intervention plan, that was in the report that I just showed you. I'm going to pop back over into the report and show you where. So hang on one second. Now I'm back into the report. And right here where it has BIP, it says yes. So we pulled it straight from there. I'm going to go back into the student's documents. Here we also have our present levels and annual goals, and this is very important for our students. We're going to be able to have all of our teachers have access to all of this, and we want to have this in. I have not pulled this into the report yet. But here in the instructional accommodations and modifications, this is being pulled into the report. And because this is what we want to put, so we know what needs to go into those gray bins. So those are the gray bins that you put together for all of the students at your school who have ESY, and all of the materials that you need to have transported to the actual ESY site. Because the ESY site is not going to have the amount of what you think that they need. So if your student needs a mat, that needs to be put in there. If your student needs to have visual schedules, put those visual schedules into that gray thing. Any equipment that your student is going to need in order to be successful at ESY needs to go into those gray bins. And so right here, you can see that I have it all on one line, and that's just the way I need to do it for right now, because that is how it's being pulled from the instructional accommodations and modifications page. I tried to do it on multiple lines, and it gave us a lot of extra numbers and letters, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. So you can see that this is right here. I'm going to go back to this report. And you can see where it says these materials will be sent in gray bins, fidgets, mats, visual schedules. And it had a little extra space in there, and that's why it has BR. So that's why we need to have it all in one row. I'm going to head back over into the ESY addendum. I'm back here in the ESY addendum for the student. And we've gone over the meeting participants, special factors, present levels, instructional accommodations. The medical, health, mobility, and transportation ESYRR is a huge portion as well. Because on those quick sheets, we needed to know if that student required an emergency evacuation plan, if they had an HMP, a health management plan, if they needed help with mobility, if they needed a wheelchair lift. Then right here it also has if they have extended school year. And if we go back to the report, I'm going to pop back over to the report so you can see where it was all captured. You can see where it has health plan. We said yes, and here it is. Transportation, yes, here it is. There are other forms. There's a form that lives outside of PSSP that has to go to our transportation place, and so that will still have to be filled out, but hopefully this will reduce some of the work that we have to do. Now I'm going to pop back over into that ESY addendum for this student. And the next page that we're going to look at is the addendum for eligibility for extended school year. And you can see this information right here. The student requires ESY services, whether it was instructional, behavioral, or related services, or all three. That is all pulled over into our report as well. Not only that, I want you to put the related services and also how much it is weekly. And I know that we have a schedule of services page, but unfortunately at the present time, there is no way to grab that information into a report. I think someday down the line that might be, but that's not today. And so in order to use this and make it more efficient for right now, we need to include this information right here. Additionally, in the area where it says how will services be provided and by whom, we want to go ahead and put whether you have a math, reading, writing, social pragmatics, school social work, OT, special transportation, PT, behavior specialist, communications, all of that as well. And I'm going to throw us back into the report so you can see what that looks like on a report. You can see that it's right here in this line as well. Now, I think as we go on and we can get more PSSP getting their ESY, their schedule of services, and we can add that in, but I don't think that will happen for this year. So this year, this is how we need to address all of the services that need to happen. So what I'm hoping this will do is this will ease your workload, and it will make it easier for our ESY coordinators to go ahead and make and doing some of the decisions they need to do. So when it comes to staffing, needing to know how many people, when it comes to with related services, EAs, all of that, we want to capture this information here in these sections in order to make those decisions. So I want to point out once again that these documents must be finalized for this report to work. You can't hang on to them. You have to finalize them, and please finalize them as soon as you have the meetings. Don't wait till the end, because this will help our ESY coordinators as they are building the program moving forward. So we are very excited about this next ESY school year. We know that it's been a difficult year this year, and it was difficult last year, and so we're excited to hopefully, knock on wood, we will have some sort of normalcy in our ESY coming this year. And of course, if you have any questions or recommendations, please feel free to contact us.